I bid you welcome.
Sweet cream on an ice cream sandwich. What in the blue hell is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2? The first Texas Chainsaw Massacre was short, it was grimy, it was gritty. It's pretty much about as Grindhouse can get. So Toby Hooper, I guess, decided to just go nuts in this one and basically make the Batman Returns of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. But enough of my blabbering, I want to toss it over to my good friend and podcast partner, Jacob Martin, who watched this along with me. So Jacob, please take it away.
Thank you, Ryan, for inviting me on your channel once again for Scarymania. This is a first. Thank you for having me be a part of this. I'm excited to talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. This was released in 1985, directed by Toby Hooper, who also directed the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, one of my horror hot takes is that I don't really think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is that great of a movie. I actually respect the movie more than I actually like it. I think it's well made. It was definitely a very revolutionary horror film for its time. But I don't really care too much about the characters in that movie. And I don't really think Leatherface is that scary of a villain. Like, Leatherface is too goofy for me to take seriously. And yeah, there's disturbing stuff in the film, especially when we see the cannibal family together. It's just not a slasher movie that I gravitate towards, especially compared to other films like Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street. But, Ryan, we've decided to cover Texas Chainsaw 2. I'm willing to give it a chance, so how did this sequel turn out? Well, it's interesting because this film came out a decade after the first film, and this film was produced by Cannon Films. If you don't know what Cannon Films were, they were an infamous, cheaply made studio from the 80s who specialized in a lot of low-budget B-movie type films. Yeah, that's the same studio who did Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, and Masters of the Universe. Yep, this is going to be an interesting movie to talk about for sure. I don't even think Toby Hooper was interested in making a sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think he just needed the money, and Cannon Films wanted to make another Texas Chainsaw movie, and Toby's like, okay, what the heck, but I'm going to make it goofy this time because it's Cannon Films. And I think that's where my issue with this sequel lies, because the things that made the first movie disturbing, the implications of everything, is just gone. I thought Leatherface was unintentionally goofy in the first film. You cannot take him or his cannibal family seriously in this movie because the whole film is just non-stop goofy from start to finish, and tonally this movie was just off because of that. Now, I will say, I got a good laugh out of the opening sequence where Leatherface comes out of nowhere and just goes after the two reckless teenagers driving while Oingo Boingo was playing in the background. That opening scene was actually very funny. I got a great kick out of that sequence. But unfortunately, the rest of the movie goes downhill from there. And dare I say it, I thought most of Texas Chainsaw 2 was pretty boring. Now, going into some positives along with the opening slasher scene, I actually do like the characters that we focus on in this sequel. I actually got into the characters more in Texas 2 than in the first film. I do like the DJ Stretch. I thought she was a fun character, and I do like her personality, and you do want to see her get out of this situation alive. And Dennis Hopper plays a Texas Ranger named Lefty, who is on the trail of Leatherface. And I thought he was pretty over the top at times, especially when he starts using chainsaws as well to go after and take down Leatherface's lair. I also thought Leatherface's lair, which was underground and it was filmed in an abandoned amusement park, I thought that was a pretty creative lair for this movie too. So those are my positives with the film. But unfortunately, like I said, this film is just boring. Once the story is established, it's just not that interesting. A lot of it is just more of the same, like we saw in the first movie, but just goofier because it's produced by Canon Films. And the goofy tone, the dark comedy, again, I don't think it works in this movie. There's way too much emphasis on camp and just the characters you just can't take seriously anymore. Like even Leatherface. Like I didn't even think Leatherface was that interesting in the first film. And yet he's 10 times dumber in this sequel. There's even a subplot where Leatherface has the hots for Stretch and they try to make you somewhat sympathetic to Leatherface. Even though he still wants to use this girl for his own purposes, but he still has a crush on her. That was a weird plot thread, and it didn't really go anywhere, in my opinion. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. There are fans of this movie, and I guess I can respect that. I saw it has gained more of a cult following over time. It was trashed when it came out. As for me, I can respect anyone who enjoys this movie. I wanted to enjoy this movie. I like the opening scene. That got the biggest laugh. But the rest of the movie, the goofiness, I didn't think was that interesting. I like some of the characters, but the overall story is pretty boring in my opinion, and the main narrative is just more of the same. Pretty much if you've seen the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you've seen Texas Chainsaw 2, but Texas Chainsaw 2 is goofier. Feels more like a parody at times, and you can't take it seriously compared to the first movie. So this movie doesn't really work for me at the end of the day, and I'll be giving the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 a 2.5 out of 5 stars. And on my 100-point scale, it's getting a 45 out of 100. Once again, thank you, Ryan, for inviting me on your channel once again for Scarymania this time, talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. If you're new to Ryan's channel, we do a podcast on his channel every week called The Life and the Movies Podcast. Definitely check those videos out if you haven't already. And Ryan is a guest on my channel. Once a month, we do the Discussing DreamWorks podcast where we dive deep into the animated films from DreamWorks Animation. Thank you for watching this video. Ryan, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on Texas Chainsaw 2. Are you a fan of this movie, or are you as puzzled and let down as I was? I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this one, so back to you, Ryan.
Like I said, give Jacob a follow on both of his channels and his Twitter links in the description. In all seriousness, though, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is just a weird movie with so many just what were you thinking like moments sprinkled throughout. Some of the original cast does return, most notably being Jim Sydow as the head of the whole chainsaw family, for lack of a better word. There are a bunch of new people, including Chop Top, played by Bill Moseley. Very creepy character, holy crap. And Leatherface this time is played by Bill Johnson instead of Gunnar Hansen. There is a difference, as Gunnar Hansen was more physical with the role, while Bill Johnson just did a lot of this. Like, seriously, every time he wields the chainsaw in the movie, he does this little dance-looking thing. It's the weirdest thing you'll see. There's Dennis Hopper, hopped up on pretty much every drug known to mankind. He's a sheriff who also wields a chainsaw, I guess, to get in Leatherface's head. I guess it makes sense to him. And then at a certain point, he just goes crazy and he drops lines like, "I'm the Lord of the Harvest." You're just sitting there like, wow, I wonder what Dennis was paid to do this, if at all. I recommend this as weirdly like a watch just to try and be entertaining. Maybe not even a so bad it's good. But if you had to choose between Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 or 2, 1 should be your go-to.